advertising for Murray and Rossi's campaigns?
I do. Yeah.
Anonymous?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. It's a really great question, and it's because of the Citizens United. I don't know if you guys have been studying that or whatever. There's this Supreme Court ruling that said, it's okay for corporations to donate an unlimited amount of money to an undisclosed. They don't even have to report that they've given that money, and then to an organization called, some whatever name they want to call it. That's like Citizens for whatever, and then they can put out advertisements. And the person running that operation right now is Karl Rove, who was Bush's, main trickster, strategist. And absolutely, I think that's having effect because people watch a lot of television. There's no doubt about that, and I think that's unfortunate. But that's so what I see. That's why I'm such a big advocate for that person-to-person conversation, because people spend so much money trying to wage a campaign via the television. But you sort of short-circuit that whole thing when you go up and actually try and talk to them as a human being. But in the absence of that, people are influenced by the TV. They are paying attention to the advertisements a little bit. And I think that's less so among younger folks because, we actually believe that, information should be, freely available, and the internet is, a cool, good thing. But, a lot of older folks just watch television and aren't very critical about the sources of information that they're getting. So, they are influenced by those groups, and they're spending millions of dollars, and we're being outspent 8 to 1, basically, nationally speaking, on the amount of money that, from these groups specifically, that is being spent on television.
When you say 8 to 1, is that Democrats and Republicans, or Rossi and Murray?
No, that's just, Democrats, Republicans, because it's a nationwide thing. So at a nationwide scale, so that's probably not the same ratio within Washington State. I don't know which direction it would go. But that's the amount of money, and that's what Barack Obama was saying a week or two ago in his address, that's the amount of money that these groups, in comparison, if you look at the groups that have those same tax statuses, that there's so much more money coming from the Republicans' side of things, which I think is unfortunate, because politics shouldn't be run by, who has the most money for advertisements. That's a joke. It should be, it should be based on, what people think and what their neighbors think, and that's what we're trying to elicit as much of as possible. To make those real conversations happen so that people aren't just voting based on what the television is telling them to do.
On that, so those commercials where one candidate will kind of attack their opponent, and we've seen Dina Rossi, and those commercials that say I support this message, and they're kind of low blows. But I've seen a couple where Patty Murray, I mean everyone does them, but Patty Murray is kind of doing the same thing to Dina Rossi. Do you think those are necessary? What's your view on those?
Well, I'm just telling you guys what I personally think, and it's not the official campaign line or whatever, right? But it's unfortunate that negative advertisements can work. They can work, but I don't think they can also have a negative effect where they just turn people off, So I think the evidence is not very strong evidence that they work exceptionally well. But like I said, I'm sort of biased against the medium entirely of television, So but I think we should focus on. I think they are effective, can be effective, but I don't think they're the best use of our resources. I think we'd be better off spending more money hiring more young folks to go out and organize than to pay more television consultants to come up with something that only a few boring people are going to pay attention to.
So on kind of a different note, what do you think is the best part about working in this community? What's the most fun for you?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, the best part about organizing is really I'm not an organizer right now, but I was an organizer. I was a field organizer before this. And the best part of that is actually getting, like I was saying, those relationships. The people you work with are incredible. People really care about what they're doing, and they have really difficult, sometimes really difficult things they're going through in their lives, but they still come through and they still volunteer their time, and they're exceptionally good at doing what we ask them to do because they believe in it, and they want to see the country better. And it just is really helpful, in the process of campaigning, to feel to see that there are people out there doing that sort of thing, that there are people who just care enough. They're not asking for you know, they're not asking for money to do it. They're not asking for a thank you. They just come and do it because they believe in it. And I'd say like getting to work with those folks, like the volunteers who just care and are passionate, that's probably the biggest benefit. Easily, I think, of being on a campaign. The problem though is the further you get up in the campaign structure, like the longer you've been around, the less actual contact you have with the volunteers themselves because you're doing more management. So, and now I'm doing more data stuff, and so, you know, where I see, you know, where I kind of get my, the best thing for me is where I get happy from now is like making the field operation more efficient. And so my job is to make, like, since I manage the data, all of the doors who we're talking to, when we're talking to them, I really believe that that is a good thing for the campaign to do. But when I was an organizer, oftentimes I would go to a door and talk to somebody. I'd be like, why am I talking to this person? They're clearly not a supporter, and they're yelling at me, and they're making me like want to cry. And so, if I can prevent that from happening, because of better data analysis and insight into who we're talking to, then I feel really good about that. You know, so you know, that's just like strategic, I guess. But absolutely, it's like meeting awesome people. Yep.
Kind of going back to that commercial campaigning kind of thing, I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of ads for Dino Rossi, coincidentally, and I'm not that big of a supporter, but his main output argument is that Patty Murray is working really closely with DC and not bringing them out to Washington. And I'm so tired of not knowing how she's doing that, so I was wondering if you could answer that for me.
Yeah. Well, like the Hanford site, I think is one example that I already gave, where you know she secured federal dollars that are coming to work in Washington State. So because that she got, you know, she goes out and fights for Washington State. I really believe that she's doing that, and you know, trying to get projects that wouldn't otherwise be funded, actually fight for them. And so it's, you know, this is the weird thing because this is when people rail against earmarks. And it's like, well, not all earmarks are actually bad, you know, and like that's actually the case. And I think a lot of them are bad because maybe we don't know who put them in the bill, or you know, I think the transparency is an issue with them often, but they're not always a bad thing. Like cleaning up that nuclear waste, I'm really glad they're doing. You know, like they're going to clean up the and she got the money for that. Another thing they did is they were going to close a number of the VA hospitals, which is the Veterans Administration hospitals. So if you guys don't know, like if you're a veteran, you are supposed to have free health care for the rest of your life from the VA. But the problem is in a lot of places, the VAs it's hard to get to a VA hospital because like they're not in rural areas or whatever. And the budget for the VA often gets cut. You know, and so like while people are willing to give money to buy like huge new bombers and fighter jets, they're not always willing to pay for healthcare for people who fought in a war 20 years ago for us. So that is one thing in particular that Patty Murray is probably one of the strongest people in the Senate I've seen in securing money both for veterans but also for VA hospitals in Washington State. She's prevented a lot of them from closing. Another thing she's done is I was talking about which was with Boeing. That's one of the largest employers in the state, and she's she has really gone out and fought to make their contract on a more level playing field with Airbus, which against their competition, which is Airbus in France. So you know she is. So it is this earmark issue, you know, and that's one of the things we have. That's part of the reason we haven't talked about it as much, because like if we talk about it, people are like, well, those are earmarks. You know, and people just have a negative association with the word earmarks. So what we've been calling them are strategically or like targeted local investments or something like that. It's like the wording they came up with. But so we don't talk about it as much because of that overriding, like those high negative associations with earmarks. But a lot of them actually have been just earmarks. And the Hanford site is is an instance of that. But I'm sure if you go to like Patty Murray's website, like not her campaign website, but the actual Senate website, because they have to maintain, you know, she can't campaign with federal dollars that she uses to run her Senate office. So if you go to the Senate office website, there's often a lot better information there about the actual legislation that she's had a role in. Yeah.
Are there any other campaigns going on right now that you're particularly interested in or excited about?
Yeah, well, I just moved out here from Colorado, and so I'm really paying close attention to the Michael Bennett versus Ken Buck race, which is a Senate level race. It's really interesting to me because Michael Bennett was appointed by the governor at that time, who was Bill Ritter. It's just because I live there mainly, but it's also the guy who's got nominated is Ken Buck, who was a Tea Party candidate. So it'll be interesting to see, how well he does versus the Democrat, who's Michael Bennett. I'm paying a lot of attention to that. Also interested to see, if Harry Reid is going to lose. He's the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, and if he loses his position, that's kind of a big deal for Democrats. So he, been watching him versus Sharon Engel in Nevada. Another one I'm really interested in California is both the governor race, Jerry Brown and Meg Whitman, and then also the Senate race there, which is Barbara Boxer and Carla Fiornia or something like that. And I think we're doing very well in California too. So,
have you ever experienced any personal frustrations with how the campaign that you're working for is being run, or a position that the campaign is taking?
Yes. Most of those frustrations, I sort of alluded to it earlier, talking about like who we talk to on the doors. Like how is our targeting defined, and who makes those decisions? Yeah, that has frustrated me in the past. It doesn't on this campaign, because on this campaign I'm in charge of it. So I kind of do it, the targeting for this campaign, and so all these folks out here, they're probably frustrated with me, but it's hard then, like particularly like on the Obama campaign, sometimes you want to just come out and say like what you really think, is right, and like generally speaking, Obama did that, and the Obama campaign did that, and I think the Patty Murray campaign is very, I don't feel like they're parsing their words very much at all. Like they are pretty much telling people what they think. But sometimes there's things like, for instance, that come up where it's like you really just want to say, like for instance, what's coming to my mind now is like on the Obama campaign when there was like the Reverend Wright issue, it was like the guy who like had this video, it was like "Goddamn America," and like that was just like a really hard time on the campaign, and I really just felt like we needed to come out, and Brock gave this speech that everybody thought was fantastic, and that was good, but the campaign then sort of backpedaled how the outreach we were doing, or how aggressively we were doing outreach into the African American communities because of them worrying about us looking like we were trying to like cause some kind of like race war or something, which obviously we're not, and but no one had even considered something like that, but like because of that sort of national narrative was so intense, and like Fox News and where it was like so like intense on like trying to stoke those fears, like we did less good work on the ground because of kind of the fear that would cause in relation to the national story that was being pushed, and that was just that was disappointing to me. I thought we should have just kept going with what we were doing and took it in stride, and not worried about what they're saying about us on Fox News.